My name is Cora Ellis. I'm 34 years old, living and working in Denver, Colorado. I never imagined that one day I'd find myself sitting in a courtroom facing my own sister, Vanessa Ellis Robbins, as she wept and demanded I pay her $4,000 a month for emotional and reputational damages that lasted over 2 decades. She claimed I'd destroyed the perfect life she had worked so hard to build. But the truth is, all I did was read one email written by her to our grandmother on the very last night Grandma was still alive. Have you ever been turned into a villain by your own family just because you dared to speak the truth? If you've ever been in a situation like mine, leave a comment below. Don't forget to like and subscribe so we can uncover the rest of this story, because what happened next was far worse. I was born and raised in Aurora, a small town about a half-hour's drive from Denver. Summers there were dry, the sun stretching across rows of red brick rooftops, and winters were still and gray, as if the world had gone quiet. My family lived in a classic two-story house with a white fence and an old maple tree in the yard. From the outside, we looked like one of those postcard-perfect Christmas scenes people send each other. But inside that perfect frame was a very different world, a world where I, the second daughter, was always the leftover, the shadow behind my sister. Vanessa was 3 years older than me. She was the family's pride and joy. My mother, Deborah, once said to a neighbor while trimming the roses, "Vanessa is like a gift sent straight from God." I was crouched nearby, picking up a cookie wrapper she had dropped, and I heard every word. She didn't know I was there. Or maybe she did and just didn't care. I had no special talents. I read slower than my classmates, had sloppy handwriting, and was constantly told to try harder. Meanwhile, Vanessa had been playing violin since she was 7, won the state debate championship at 13, and was crowned homecoming queen in her junior year. Every time she entered a competition, my mother would sew a new dress, do her hair, and prep every detail. But when I was selected to read a poem in class, I'd barely get a nod. I still remember my 8th birthday. I dreamed of a chocolate cake shaped like pencils and paintbrushes because I loved to draw. Mom nodded and said she'd take care of it. That year we had a joint birthday party since Vanessa's birthday was just days apart from mine. When I walked into the living room, I saw a pink 3-tier cake covered in flowers with the words, "Happy birthday to our angel Vanessa." Mom told me, "It's beautiful, right? You can share it with your sister." I nodded. I always nodded. I didn't know how to say no. My grades were average at best. The one time I got an A on a painting assignment, I ran home waving the paper in front of my mom. She was cooking. She glanced at it, wiped her hands on her apron, and said, "Good. You should try that hard in math, too." That paper is still in the drawer of my old desk. It's yellowed and fading now. My father, Howard, was a quiet man, a civil engineer. He usually came home late, read the paper, then went to bed. In that house, he was a background figure, just like me. Only my grandmother, June, truly saw me. She lived alone at the end of the street in a small ivy-covered house. Her voice was deep, round, and full of patience. She used to tell me, "You're a quiet light, Cora. Some people are born to shine in a crowd, but you're quiet, thoughtful, and one day that light will guide your own way." I didn't fully understand what she meant back then. I just knew that at her house, I felt heard. Whenever I showed her a drawing, she'd pause to admire it. When I talked about a book I'd just read, even if it was a simple children's story, she'd ask, "Which character did you like best?" My mother never once asked me that. On winter evenings, I'd go to Grandma's, and we'd sit by the fireplace sipping hot cocoa. She'd knit scarves while I drew whatever came to mind. She never interrupted, never compared me to anyone. She'd rest a hand on my shoulder when I was down and say, "You don't need to be like anyone else. Just be true to yourself." By middle school, things got worse. Vanessa had a boyfriend and got picked up in his car while I still walked home. I noticed the whispers, the glances in the hallway. I had a crush on a boy named Dylan from science class. When Vanessa randomly asked if I liked anyone, I told her, thinking she cared. 2 days later, I heard Dylan's friends laughing behind the school building. Cora left a love note in Dylan's locker. Out of her mind, one of them shouted. I was only a few feet away, gripping my backpack. When I turned, I saw Vanessa standing at a distance, arms crossed, smirking with her friends. I went home, walked into my room, took the drawing I'd made of Dylan the day before, tore it to shreds, and shoved the pieces deep in the trash can. I think my mom knew, maybe Vanessa told her, but she only said, "Don't be delusional. Boys like Dylan don't go for girls like you." That's when I started retreating. I stopped talking about school, about dreams. I just wrote in notebooks, sketched in the margins of my folders, laughed quietly at my own daydreams. I kept it all in my head because I knew no one was really listening. I realized early that in that house, I had no stage, no spotlight, no applause, just silence. And in that silence, Grandma was the only one who ever truly heard me. That silence became my entire world, a quiet, lonely world where I learned to grow without praise and to exist without being expected. I was 15 when I first understood what deliberate injustice felt like. When people choose to believe a polished image so much that they cover the truth, even at the cost of their conscience. Vanessa was applying for a full-ride scholarship to Emerson Academy. Our house buzzed for weeks. Mom decorated the living room like a press event. Dad brought it up every night at dinner. "If she gets in, we'll be the pride of the whole neighborhood," Mom told a neighbor, borrowing a ladder. I remember that night clearly. I was doing homework at the dining table. Vanessa was on the computer nearby. She thought I wasn't paying attention, but I saw the screen's reflection, long paragraphs I'd read somewhere before. Curious, I memorized a few lines and looked them up later. The original essay was from an academic blog posted 3 years earlier. Vanessa had copied nearly the entire thing. I couldn't believe it. I stayed silent for 2 days, partly scared, partly hoping she'd change her mind. But when I saw Mom proudly showing off the printed application, I couldn't take it anymore. I brought her my findings. "Mom, I think you should see this," I said, my voice shaking. She looked at the paper, her expression shifting from curious to cold. "Where did you get this?" I saw Vanessa use that part. It's identical to an online article. I thought. Before I could finish, she raised her hand. The slap wasn't hard enough to knock me down, but it froze me in place. "You're trying to ruin your sister out of jealousy?" Her eyes flared. "Do you know how hard she's worked? What have you done to earn this family's trust?" I stood there, cheeks burning, heart pounding. No one asked how I knew. No one checked the facts. The only thing that mattered was this. I was the petty little sister, jealous, and out to sabotage her future. That night, I didn't eat dinner. I went to my room, locked the door, and sat on the edge of my bed for hours. From that moment, I knew the truth meant nothing if people didn't want to hear it, and talent meant nothing if it came from someone the family never valued. I stopped sharing ideas with Mom. I stopped sketching dream bedrooms or cozy reading nooks. I still did my work, still completed my homework, but everything felt like a routine. The only joy I had left was my weekends at Grandma June's. She still looked at me with the same gentle eyes. One day, I showed her a hand-drawn room design. Big windows, a reading chair in the corner, walls lined with portraits of female artists I admired. She looked at it for a while and said, "If people can't see what you create, it's not because your work isn't beautiful. It's because they only know how to look for what they already understand." But art was never meant to please the familiar. At the time, I didn't say anything, but I took that drawing home, laminated it, and kept it in my portfolio for years. It was proof that even if just one person truly saw me, it was enough to keep me from disappearing. 9 years later, when I was 24, living and working in Denver at a small design firm, I got a call from Grandma. Her voice was shaky, unlike every time before. "Cora, are you free this afternoon? I need you to come by for a bit." I asked to leave work early and drove over right away. She was waiting for me on the porch, holding a stack of papers, worry clouding her eyes. "Vanessa came by last week," she said as I sat down. "She brought some papers she wanted me to sign." I couldn't see clearly, so I asked her to read them. But there was one. I saw my name listed as a co-signer on a loan. I froze. Did you sign it? I didn't. She shook her head. But I'm afraid she'll come back. I picked up the stack and flipped through it. One was a loan application to buy a car worth nearly $60,000, with Vanessa Ellis Robbins as the primary borrower and June M. Ellis as the cosigner. Grandma's signature line was still blank. You didn't tell my mom? Deborah wouldn't believe me. She's never believed anyone but Vanessa. I bit my lip. That familiar ache opened up again, like an old cut being torn back open. I told Grandma I'd hold on to the paperwork, make a copy, and take it to her private attorney, just in case anything happened. She just nodded, her fingers gently touching my wrist, soft, like an unspoken apology. Driving home, I played music low, but the silence in my chest rang loud. I used to think Vanessa was just spoiled, but that day I began to see it clearly. Being favored doesn't just make someone lazy, it can make them dangerous when they grow to believe everything belongs to them, even someone else's integrity. At 28, I rented a small space in the Five Points neighborhood in Denver to open my first design studio. It wasn't big, only about 400 square feet, but it had ceiling-high windows that welcomed the morning sun and one exposed brick wall that I fell in love with the moment I saw it. I spent 3 weeks painting it myself, installing shelves, and bringing artwork from my tiny apartment to hang. My breath finally had a place to exist outside my body. I worked 6 days a week, taking every job I could, designing cozy cafes, kitchens for newlyweds, reading nooks for retired grandmas. My clients came through word of mouth and stayed because I truly listened to what they needed. Not Pinterest perfect homes, but spaces where they could actually live. I knew I wasn't flashy like Vanessa, but every client who walked through my door made me believe I'd chosen the right path. While I was quietly building my dream, Vanessa's life continued in dazzling fashion. She married Brian Robbins, a well-known financial investor 3 years older than her, whose LinkedIn page was practically a novel and whose name graced the pages of finance magazines as the sharp strategist of the Rockies. Their wedding was held at a luxurious garden estate in Aspen. I wasn't invited. Even Grandma only received her invitation last minute with a note, "If your health allows, we hope you can attend." Grandma told me, "I doubt I'd enjoy a 4-course French menu, sweetheart." We laughed together, but I saw the flicker of pain in her eyes. Vanessa became the host of a morning show on a local TV station, the same one I used to watch as a kid to practice reading subtitles. Now that same voice, those polished expressions, that perfectly styled smile greeted viewers every morning from TVs in dental clinics, diners, and airport lounges. One time, I was having coffee with a client in a small cafe in Capitol Hill when the TV above us switched to her show. She was smiling wide next to a fashion expert. My client glanced up, then looked at me. "That anchor looks familiar, kind of like you." I smiled lightly and said, "Probably just a coincidence." That was around the time I met Mark Spencer. He taught art at a public high school. We met at a local art exhibition, both of us standing quietly in front of a charcoal drawing of an abandoned wooden chair in the woods. He was quiet, reserved, but his eyes were honest and deep. When he found out I designed the reading room at the library near his school, he smiled. "So you're the reason my students don't want to leave." I wasn't used to someone like Mark. He didn't flatter or praise me in hollow ways, but when he asked, "Cora, what's the first thing you think about when designing?" I froze. No one had ever asked me that before. Not "Where did you go to school?" or "How much does a kitchen renovation cost?" I replied, "I think about the light. That first light you see when you walk into a room. It decides whether you want to stay." Mark didn't laugh. He just nodded and said, "You live like your designs." We started dating soon after. No roses or fancy dinners, just quiet weekends biking the Boulder Creek Trail, Sunday nights watching documentaries and debating the lines in each shot. Mark listened in a way I'd never experienced, not with distraction or judgment, but full presence. With him, I didn't need to speak louder to be heard. I I just had to speak, and he listened. Everything seemed to finally settle into something peaceful, something right. But one April evening, my phone rang. It was Grandma. I had been organizing sketches for a condo renovation project when her name appeared on the screen. Her voice cracked from the very first word. Cora, I need to talk to you. Vanessa just left, and I think I made a mistake. I dropped everything. What happened? Are you okay? No. She came with a lawyer. Said she needed me to sign a revised will. Said it was to simplify things. She told me if I left the house to someone outside the family, people would sue and make life hard for you. I signed it, Cora. I signed it. I gripped the phone, unable to speak. I'm not an outsider, I whispered. I know, she said, her voice trembling, but she talked so fast, pressured me, handed me the papers while I was tired. I didn't get a chance to read. I heard her crying. Can you come? I don't want to be alone. I only had time to grab my coat, shut off the studio lights, shove my keys in my pocket, and run out. The night sky was overcast, streetlights blurred behind a thin mist, as if everything was signaling that something had just gone wrong. And I knew from that moment on, nothing in this family would ever be the same again. I arrived at Grandma's house just as the clock struck 8 p.m. A warm yellow light glowed from the living room. The door was unlocked. I stepped inside and saw her sitting in her armchair, one hand clutching her olive green knit shawl, the other gripping a thin folder. On the table in front of her sat a thick brown envelope sealed tight. You're here, I said softly, sitting down beside her. She turned to me, her aged eyes still sharp but full of pain. I'm sorry I signed it, but I didn't think she'd really do it. I held her hand, squeezing gently. Can you tell me everything from the beginning? She nodded, voice slow and steady. Last week, Vanessa came with a young man in a suit, called himself her attorney. She said she needed to settle documents to avoid messy lawsuits later on. I was tired, didn't have my glasses, and honestly, I thought, just go along with it if it keeps the family from fighting. But I haven't slept in 3 nights. Something in her eyes gave me chills. I didn't say a word. Then Grandma reached under the cushion and pulled out a small black USB drive, tied with a frayed red string. A tiny label on it, written in shaky handwriting, read, "In case they come after you." She kept this for safekeeping. It was everything she had recorded over the years. Emails, audio recordings, things she saw but nobody asked about. I took it, looked at her, and was speechless. She stared at me for a long moment, then said, "If things get bad, you'll need this." 3 weeks later, Grandma June passed away. It was a soft May morning, the sky unusually clear and blue, as if she chose that day to leave peacefully. She died in her sleep without pain. I didn't cry when I got the news. I stood quietly in the funeral home, looking at her body, so light, so calm, as if all the burdens she carried through life were finally lifted. The will reading took place on a Thursday afternoon at her attorney's office. Benjamin Clark, a silver-haired man, thin but with a steady voice. The room was silent, with only me, my mother, stepfather, Vanessa, Brian, and Attorney Clark present. No one looked at me when I entered. Vanessa wore a long black dress, her hair neatly tied up, sitting with her legs crossed, as if ready to accept an award. Attorney Clark began formally. Before I read the main content, I must say, Mrs. June Ellis updated her will 6 months before her passing. I witnessed the signing personally and recorded it at her request. Vanessa sat upright. My mother glanced at me strangely. The will was read item by item. At first, small things. A jade necklace for a close friend. A book collection for the town library. Then the main part. The house at 1832 Maple Street, including all furnishings and legal ownership, I leave to my granddaughter, Cora Ellis, along with $300,000 in a savings account to support her design career and stable living. I dared not breathe. The attorney continued without changing tone. I give full authority to manage the Ellis Art Scholarship Fund to Cora, with the goal of supporting talented but underprivileged students. The room fell silent. Vanessa tightened her purse strap. My mother frowned. Brian glanced at his wife but said nothing. To my daughter, Deborah Ellis Thompson, Clark continued, I leave the antique tea set and family photo library. To Vanessa Ellis Robbins, I leave the white gold wedding ring and the pearl necklace I wore on my wedding day. It was all... Vanessa stood up sharply. No way. This isn't the final version. She revised it. She told me clearly that... I have the recording, Clark interrupted. It captures the last conversation between Mrs. Ellis and me. But if you wish to continue disputing, I think it's time for Cora to play the recording Grandma June sent her privately. I opened my bag, took out my laptop, plugged in the USB, and opened an audio file about 1.5 minutes long. The room froze as Vanessa's voice played, clear and cold. She's just a kid clinging to Grandma for the inheritance. If she disappears, I'm serious, we take everything. The house, the scholarship fund, everything. Nobody cares if she lives or dies. Just keep her quiet. The last sentence rang out unmistakably. My mother turned pale. Brian looked away. I stared at Vanessa. She stared back, as if wanting to tear my face apart but couldn't say a word. I turned off the laptop. No applause, no laughter. But inside me something surged. Not triumph, but the feeling of being heard, of being seen. No one spoke for the rest of the will reading, but I knew, from the moment that recording played, the balance had shifted. And I, once pushed to the margins, was now at the center of the truth. The court notice arrived one morning in mid-June while I was reviewing renderings for a gallery renovation project downtown Denver with my team. The delivery man wore a green jacket, handed me a thick yellow envelope, his eyes filled with sympathy. Coriolis? That's me. I need you to sign for this. I froze as I opened the envelope. The headline cut like a cold knife. Complaint. Vanessa Ellis Robbins sues Cora Ellis for defamation, damage to reputation, elder fraud, and personal income interference. I held the papers, my fingers trembling. The allegations were lined up thick as if prepared long ago. There was even a list of witnesses. I skimmed, then froze when I saw my mother's and stepfather's names. Stephen Thompson. I sank into my chair, unable to read further. My head spun as if I'd fallen from a great height. When I called Grandma's lawyer, Clark, he sighed. I thought she might do something, but not this fast and this hard. And my mother? They probably think going to court will force you to settle. Actually, they're attacking your reputation first. I hung up, feeling empty. Not because I feared the lawsuit, but because it felt like my own blood had turned against me again, this time publicly, with signatures and sworn statements. That afternoon, I went to the studio as usual. The lights were on, calls still came in, but I had no focus to draw. Every sketch faded behind the fog in my mind. The next bad news came Wednesday afternoon via email. A major furniture partner I'd worked with for nearly a year, Crownstone Decor, sent notice to suspend contracts on the Colorado Springs showroom chain. Due to recent unresolved information related to Ms. Cora Ellis personally, we must postpone all deployments to protect our brand image. I read it over and over, unable to understand what was unresolved. All my evidence was real. The recordings, handwritten letters, USB, will all confirmed, but clearly a vague online article reposting the lawsuit, showing me leaving the lawyer's office, was enough to scare them off. That night, I didn't go home. I stayed at the studio until nearly 10 p.m., turned off all the lights, leaving only a small desk lamp on to stare at the unfinished drawings. The spacious room suddenly shrank, the exposed brick wall peeling as if losing all life. Mark came when I least expected. He didn't knock. He just quietly opened the door, stepped in, and placed a paper bag smelling of waffles and hot cocoa on the table. Eat something. I wasn't hungry, but I opened the bag, took a bite of a pastry, chewing slowly. He said nothing, didn't ask me to explain, just sat across, leaning back like I only had to look up and there would be someone to lean on. When I finished, Mark spoke evenly and slowly. I heard about everything, the lawsuit, Crownstone pulling out. I nodded, silent. Are you scared? I looked up at him. I don't know anymore. I'm more tired than scared. Tired of feeling like no one in my family believes me. My mother is willing to stand in court to defend Vanessa, even though she knows what I say is true. I don't understand how a mother can do that. Mark nodded, his eyes growing serious. Maybe she never really saw you, or if she did, she chose not to. I smiled sadly. I thought just proving the truth would be enough, but it seems it's not enough if people don't want to hear it. Maybe, he said, then leaned closer with a more serious look. But right now, it's not about needing someone to believe you. It's about you needing to believe in yourself. I looked at him, silent. Cora, this isn't the first time in your life you've been pushed aside, but this time you have the right to stand up and claim everything you deserve for yourself, for Grandma June, for those days you sat in her corner, drawing rooms no one had seen. You've lived quietly all your life. Now it's time to step out and stand tall. I gripped the cocoa cup, warmth spreading inside. Mark stood and gently placed a hand on my shoulder. Starting tomorrow, you need your own lawyer. You need to remake your plan. And I'll be here every night if you need me. I didn't reply, but my breathing steadied. I felt I still had a place to start over. Maybe, from the place pushed furthest away, people discover how far they can go. The hearing took place Monday morning in Courtroom 6 of Arapahoe County. I arrived early, sitting quietly in the defendant's row. Jasmine Clark, my lawyer, sat beside me, holding the file and a digital interpreter headset. She was a calm African-American woman in her 40s, formerly a prosecutor, now defending clients rejected by their families. Her calmness eased my nerves. Across the room, Vanessa sat in a cream-colored dress, hands resting lightly on her knee like she was ready for a TV interview. Her husband Brian was there too, in a light gray suit, glued to his phone. My mother sat just behind them, her eyes cold like a late winter wind. Judge Whitaker appeared, white-haired, with a stern but careful gaze. After brief opening remarks, the plaintiff was invited to speak first. Vanessa rose calmly, stepping to the podium. Her voice trembled, eyes watering, just as the microphone caught her words. I never wanted to sue my own sister, she began, but Cora abused my grandmother's trust in her final days. She pretended to be her caregiver, gradually manipulating Grandma into changing her will, cutting out the rest of the family. My sister has always been withdrawn, somewhat jealous of me since childhood, and I believe that led her to cross the line. She paused, then continued with a choked voice. No one knows the pain I endured watching my husband dragged into this fabricated story. My marriage is strained, my work is criticized, my reputation attacked. Jasmine leaned toward me, whispering, "Get ready for the rebuttal." But let her finish. Vanessa ended by showing a photo of Grandma in the hospital, eyes closed, oxygen tubes in place. She was not of sound mind when signing the will, Vanessa said, and I believe Cora took advantage of that. The room fell silent for a few seconds. The judge nodded. Miss Clark? Jasmine stood, stepped to the defense podium, her voice steady. Your Honor, we do not dispute the plaintiff's feelings, but we have clear evidence that Mrs. June Ellis was fully of sound mind when updating her will. More importantly, we have an independent witness who can confirm the actual level of involvement each party had during Mrs. Ellis's last 6 months. The judge nodded. Call the witness. The courtroom door opened and a woman about 50 years old entered. She wore a blue blouse, her hair tied back neatly, a fit figure. I saw Vanessa flinch when she recognized her. Your Honor, this is Mrs. Lillian Harper, who worked part-time as a caregiver and housekeeper at Mrs. June Ellis's home from 2014 until this April. Lillian took the witness stand and was sworn in. Her voice was confident and clear. I worked for Mrs. Ellis every Tuesday and Friday. During her last 6 months, I saw Cora almost every weekend, sometimes even midweek. She cooked, did laundry, and talked with Grandma. One time when I came by, they were looking at old wedding photos together. Grandma laughed heartily. And Vanessa? Lillian frowned slightly. Only twice in 6 months. The first time she brought a pile of papers for Mrs. Ellis to sign. Grandma seemed reluctant, but did it. The second time was similar. Did you keep any records during your work? I kept a personal diary, recording dates, times, tasks done, and special events. I kept this habit to compare my work with the senior care office. Jasmine moved to the defense table, pulling out a red notebook, flipping to a marked page. This is January 18th, she said, then read aloud. Vanessa arrived with a man in a suit. Mrs. Ellis said, "Here she goes again with papers." After signing, she whispered to me, "I'm so tired, just hoping Cora comes home soon." Murmurs filled the room. The judge tapped his gavel lightly. "Not finished, Your Honor," Jasmine said. "We also have a video clip from a hidden security camera Mrs. Ellis requested in early December. The clip is about 40 seconds long." The big screen lit up. Black and white footage showed Vanessa standing in Grandma's living room. Her voice was clear. "More signing? You think I'm going to care for this walking corpse? I've brought papers 3 times already. If you don't sign, I'll have Cora move in and turn this house into a paint-splattered studio." The room went silent. I saw Brian bow his head. My mother closed her eyes. Vanessa jumped up, trembling voice. "That's edited. I don't remember saying that. She set me up." "Silence in the courtroom," the judge barked, turning to Jasmine. Jasmine simply nodded. "We will provide the full, original data, with time steps from the storage system. This video is unedited." I looked at Vanessa and saw her lose control of her expression. No more fancy words, no more timely tears. Just a woman stripped bare of her facade before undeniable truth. And I, the sister once called invisible, was backed by truth itself, right in what seemed to be the stage of the powerful. The trial recessed for 10 minutes while the judge consulted with the court clerk, allowing both sides to prepare for the decision whether the case had enough grounds to proceed to a formal trial. I sat still in the dark leather chair, hands cold, breath held, like waiting for a tsunami. Jasmine carefully flipped through the files as if used to waiting while fighting. Her phone rang, the screen light reflecting off her thin, silver-rimmed glasses. She checked the caller ID, gestured for permission, and stepped into the hallway. I glanced through the small glass window where she stood, her hand clutching the phone, her expression shifting from surprise to focus, then finally, eyes lighting up as if she just found the key in a maze. When she returned, her smile was slight, but there was clearly something changed. She leaned close to my ear and whispered, "A golden opportunity. Are you ready?" I nodded, still not fully understanding what was happening. Jasmine stepped forward, asking the judge's permission to present a new development directly affecting the case. After a brief exchange, the judge nodded. "Just now," Jasmine said, "we received contact from Douglas Kane, the producer of the documentary series Family Solar System, currently working with PBS. While gathering materials on the topic manipulation and hidden family crimes, they reached a witness who was once threatened by Vanessa Ellis Robbins with an anonymous letter when she was an intern at the TV station where Vanessa worked. That letter demanded the student quit, accompanied by an audio recording with the same tone, lip movements, and wording as the tape we just played in court." Whispers started from the plaintiff's side, some exchanging startled looks. This student, now an independent reporter in Seattle, is willing to cooperate with the court to provide all letters, recordings, and work documents with the station's HR at that time. The incident was kept confidential under an internal non-disclosure agreement. However, after watching the clips presented in court today, the witness confirms this is the voice of the person who threatened her. Judge Whitaker lightly tapped the armrest, eyes focused on Jasmine. "Miss Clark, do you intend to include this information in the official defense?" "Not just defense, Your Honor. We request to publicly disclose all related evidence, including a chain of emails, audio recordings, and voice analysis data from UC Berkeley's language lab provided by the documentary team working on this case." After some discussion, the judge allowed us to use the court's projector to display all electronic evidence for 15 minutes. The courtroom darkened. The screen lit up. Jasmine plugged the USB into the laptop and opened each file. First was a series of emails between Vanessa and my mother, discussing how to handle the girl living in the house but unaware of her place. Next came an audio recording of Vanessa speaking to my mother. She has nothing but a mediocre name and some worthless paintings. If Grandma doesn't transfer the house to me, I'll leak all the photos of her messy studio online. Who would trust someone like that to run the scholarship fund? Then, Jasmine played an excerpt from the voice lab analysis. A 93% match between the anonymous letter's voice sent to the student years ago and the voice on the recording from Grandma's house. Accompanying that was an image of the anonymous email with IP tracking showing it was sent from Vanessa's home in Boulder. The atmosphere thickened. A silver-haired woman behind me gasped, "Oh my God!" Finally, Jasmine replayed the full 2-minute video of Vanessa calling Grandma a walking corpse. Not the shortened version, but the entire clip. In it, Vanessa not only insulted Grandma, but also clearly said, "I don't need Cora hanging around here anymore. As long as she disappears, I get everything." When the video ended, the room fell into a silence so deep you could hear the projector fan. Before the judge could speak, a middle-aged man from the audience clapped. The applause echoed like it shattered a carefully constructed curtain of deception built over years. Then another, then another. The whole room stood, clapping loudly, as if affirming that the truth had finally been acknowledged. Vanessa slumped in her seat, hands covering her face. Brian stepped back silently. My mother quietly lowered her head. I stayed still, not out of surprise, but because in all my life, this was the only moment I didn't have to speak to be heard. The truth spoke for me. The final hearing took place one early fall morning as maple leaves began turning gold along the streets near Jefferson County Courthouse. The courtroom was sealed tight, heavy with anticipation, as if everyone was holding their breath for the inevitable. I sat beside Jasmine, hands resting lightly on the wooden table, heart quietly pounding, eyes tracking Judge Whitaker as he approached the bench. He adjusted his glasses, glanced around the room, then opened the thick case file. His voice was steady, each word striking like a hammer on stone. Matter thoroughly reviewing all documents, evidence, testimonies, and especially the audio and video provided during the hearing, the court concludes that the lawsuit filed by Vanessa Ellis Robbins is a deliberate act of retaliation, lacking solid legal basis, and constitutes an abuse of the judicial system. His face popped. Therefore, the court dismisses the entire case. Vanessa Ellis Robbins is ordered to reimburse all legal costs incurred by the defendant, Cora Ellis. Additionally, the court mandates an independent criminal investigation into the forgery, elder abuse, and perjury involved. I don't remember when I exhaled. I only knew the heavy weight pressing on my shoulders for years suddenly lifted, as if someone untied a tight noose around my chest. Across the room, Vanessa still hung her head, her face drained of color. Her lawyer packed up quickly, avoiding all eyes. Brian, the man who once accompanied her to countless charity events, now stood 3 steps away, silent like a stranger. Reporters waited outside the courthouse, cameras and microphones raised. When Jasmine and I stepped out, midday sunlight filtered through old oak trees, casting shadows like silk dyed in gold on the ground. I walked slowly but steadily, not hiding my face, not avoiding anyone. A Denver Post reporter asked, "Cora, do you have anything to say to those following your story?" I stopped, looked straight into the camera. "I just want to say, truth doesn't always win right away, but it has something lies don't. Patience. And when its time comes, it will rise, not shouting, just by being present." Within hours, news sites everywhere posted blazing headlines. The brave daughter exposing a powerful family's deceit. Some online outlets called me Little Ellis, the new symbol of integrity in a media-darkened world. The clip of Vanessa calling Grandma a walking corpse spread rapidly on TikTok, Facebook, and YouTube, sparking a flood of angry comments. Many users wrote, "If that's how she talks about the person who raised her, no one is safe around her." Less than 3 days later, Boulder News Network released a brief statement. "We have terminated the indefinite contract with host Vanessa Ellis Robbins. The station does not tolerate unethical behavior or breaches of professional standards." A week later, the news was even more shocking. Brian Robbins, her husband, filed for divorce in Boulder City Court, petitioning for custody of their 8-year-old daughter, Grace, citing mother's behavior endangering the child's mental and moral development. The Ellis family, once known for charity fundraisers and prominent family magazine covers, now appeared in headlines with dark titles, From Fame to Fallout, the story of a family hiding the truth. One afternoon, while I was organizing books in the scholarship office, recently relaunched in her name, Ellis Arts Fellowship, Jasmine walked in, handing me a stack of files. Volunteer applications. Less than 48 hours since the scholarship announcement. Cora, you didn't just protect Grandma's legacy, you revived its true meaning. I smiled, gently taking down the framed photo hanging on the wall. The picture of Grandma and me beneath the white rose bush on the old porch. She still smiled softly, her hand resting on my shoulder as if still there, as if she had always seen me even when the world tried to ignore me. A month after everything ended in court, I returned to the old house she left me. The scent of aged wood still lingered in the air, and her portrait hung above the fireplace. I sat in the armchair by the window where she used to knit on winter afternoons, quietly opening my laptop to write the first lines of the scholarship proposal I had nurtured for years. I named it June's Light, Grandma June's Light, because she was the first and only person who truly saw me for who I am. The scholarship aims to support high school students with artistic talent who have been abandoned by family or society, kids like me, labeled inadequate simply because they didn't fit a mold others set. We started with a small exhibit at the Denver Public Library, displaying paintings by 8 students from unknown schools. One 15-year-old girl named Maya had painted an oil painting of an empty kitchen with only an upside-down bowl and a bent spoon. When I asked, she simply said, "I painted the silence at dinner." I turned away to hide my tears. I had sat through dinners just like that. Later, I received an invitation from TEDx Boulder. At first, I declined. I'm not used to public speaking, especially not telling painful stories, as if opening a diary in the middle of a market. But one windy evening, Mark took my hand and gently said, "You don't tell to be praised. You tell so others know they're not alone." So, I stood on stage, under warm lights, speaking about truth and recognition, about being seen as a fundamental need like breathing. I spoke about her, about the look in her eyes when she watched me draw a leaf with a worn colored pencil, and she said, "This is why you came to this world." That talk was shared millions of times, messages poured in from strangers. A woman in Ohio said she had always been the family's leftover. An old man in Texas said he hid an oil painting in his basement for 30 years. They said because of me, they felt they could breathe. Mark proposed to me one afternoon in the studio. He didn't bring a diamond ring. Instead, he gave me a hand-drawn sketch. A little girl standing under a yellow light on an empty train platform, holding the first sketch of her life. Below the drawing was scribbled, "I love the girl who was once considered invisible." I laughed through tears, I nodded. Then I hugged him as if life had finally eased its grip on me. 1 year later, on a Sunday morning while preparing color palettes for a weekend painting class at the studio, the doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone. When I opened the door, I stood frozen for a moment. My mother, Deborah, stood there, her hair mostly gray, lips slightly trembling. She held a small paper bag containing an old photo of me and Vanessa as children, playing on a slide in the park. "Cora," she said, voice shaky like dry leaves, "I don't expect you to forgive me. I just want to say I'm sorry. I was wrong. I was blind, letting fake things overshadow what mattered most." I looked at her for a long time, remembering the birthdays I was forgotten, the glances always turned to my sister, the times I was snuffed out in my own home like an extra candle. But I also remembered her wiping my forehead when I had a fever, her gentle lullabies when I was 3. I didn't reach out, nor did I close the door. I just looked at her and softly said, as if reading from a story now ending, "I don't hate you anymore. But I chose to be my own mother a long time ago." She paused, eyes wet. No hugs, no promises, just the truth spoken, and a silence no longer painful. She turned and left the photo bag at the door. I watched her go, the studio door gently closing behind me with the breeze. On the wall, among the students' vivid paintings, I saw myself in every stroke, no longer someone's shadow, but a complete, free person. What do you think about my choice? That sometimes forgiveness doesn't mean acceptance, but a way to move forward without carrying old wounds. Every life has silent turning points only we truly understand. Sometimes all it takes is someone believing in you, like my grandma once did. Sometimes it takes a lifetime to learn to believe in yourself. If you've ever been undervalued, pushed aside in your own home, I hope this story makes you feel understood. Don't hesitate to share your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to listen. And if stories about family, truth, and journeys of self-discovery matter to you, please subscribe so you don't miss the next episodes. Because sometimes just one well-timed story is enough to soothe an unhealed memory.